thanks everyone for tuning in to Sims Workshop. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, it is time for my wrap-up. Unfortunately, I only read 11 books this month, but in fairness, one of them was a chunky 800-page book, and I also got really sick the last 2 weeks of May, because I discovered that my AC got soaked, it flooded, and I didn't realize that it had flooded on the inside, and I was breathing in an inch and a half of like moldy water, which explained so much. But now I got it taken care of. It's better. I'm better. So now I'm back to like reading. I mean, my sinuses were I couldn't even listen to my audiobooks because my ears just kept popping all the time. So I couldn't even listen to my audiobooks. So it was kind of miserable. It was kind of awful for like 2 weeks, but now I'm better. So hopefully for June I'll be able to read as much as I want, God willing. But yeah, I only got to read 11 books this month, and we're going to start off with The Shade of the Moon. This is the 4th novel in the Life as We Knew It series. That got dark. That got really dark. Like it wasn't like it was unexpected. You saw the direction even from the first novel, but it got dark. This has not been a lighthearted, series to begin with. Asteroid knocks the moon closer to Earth. It has devastating effects because of the gravitational pull. But geez, we're following John now, and it's been a couple years since that last book. His sister is now married to Alex from book 2, and now she's expecting a baby. It's a whole lot that's happening, and his life kinda sucks, but also doesn't suck. I mean, he's living in this community full of well-off people, right? So in order to make sure he's able to stay in the community, he kind of has like this facade and bravado. But damn, some of the things that happen, it broke my heart. But that's good, It's good when a book kind of breaks your heart because it means you're emotionally invested. And it just broke my heart because it felt so realistic. Just like the other novels in the book, it felt really realistic. And you're just like, damn, this is awful. I could totally see this happening. But I will say that ending note, it did leave you with some hope at the end. And I'm like, you know what? There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There is always hope. You don't always have to fall into the darkness and the despair. So I like that. It ended on a note of hope. And it was a good way to really round out the series and bring it to a really solid conclusion. After that, I read Heart of the Sun Warrior. Excellent novel. I will say, however, as much as I loved it, I didn't love it as much as Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I think that's because Daughter of the Moon Goddess for me was just something kind of fresh and something kind of new. And this one, it continues her journey. And I like that there's more that's going on. We have a new bad guy who's not really a new bad guy. He was introduced in the first book, but now you're seeing the ramifications of everything that happened in that first book come ahead in this book. And it ties back to her parents, Hoya and Chang'e. And I think it's just kind of heartwarming at some points. And I also like this, how it deals with grief. There's a lot of the characters have to deal with grief in their own way. Or a loss of love or a loss of identity. And I like that we're also kind of dealing with this idea of first loves versus final loves, And I think it really develops our main character really well. And that ending kind of broke my heart. You're just but you've seen her grow and you've seen her mature. So now she has to kind of rectify who she is now with who she used to be. And then her first love versus her new love. And she has to like challenge her identity and what she wants. She has to figure out what she wants in life. And it's really relatable and really realistic. So I think that's what I really appreciated about the novel. It's a very thoughtful fantasy. And I love thoughtful fantasies. All right. After that, I read To the Nines by Kes Truster. So remember, the first 2 books were gifted to me by the publisher. I love them so much, I went and I bought book 3. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I did like it. And I do want to see what's going to happen in book 4. I'm like following the author now on all her profiles. I'm like, I need book 4, right? However, this novel felt a little repetitive at times. And you know what's going to happen with the love triangle. I think that's kind of obvious from the first book. You know that there's a love triangle. Now we're actually seeing this love triangle come to life. But there's a lot that's happening. And you know what I was just talking about with first loves versus final loves? You're seeing that come into play with this novel as well. Like, she has to figure out what she wants from the community of the Nines. She has to figure out how she wants to exist in the Nines. You know, a sidekick, a partner, someone to be taken care of, or someone who will inspire someone to burn the world for them. You know, she has to really kind of find a balance with everything. And you have these 2 boys who are so very different, vying for her heart. And it's just like, well, which one does she choose? You know, which one's going to be better for her emotionally and mentally? You know, who is the better match for her? So there's a lot at play. You definitely see that tension rising between the romance. And I did like the mystery. I do like how her sister is now a mind reader. I like how she's discovered her father is a sentinel, and not just a sentinel, like a very, very powerful sentinel. I do like how the story is developing. I just felt like this one itself was a little repetitive, and there were times where I was just like, oh my god, can we move on already? As far as the story was progressing. But it was still very action-packed. It was still, for the most part, fast-paced. And I did enjoy it. I just, some of those scenes could have been like, okay, come on, we get the point, move on already. You've done this in books 1 and 2 already. Like, come on, let's just get going. So that's just my only hindrance with the novel. After that, I read Atalanta, and I will say I did like this one more than Electra. I like that we're back to our single POV for the most part. And Atalanta, you know, she was the only female member of the Argonauts. And she took a vow of chastity. She wants to be like Artemis. Woo woo. I love Artemis. She's my favorite. And it's really interesting to see her story come to life. You know, as much as I do like Greek mythology, it is very much skewed into the male favor, you know, and that's not, you know, a criticism. It's just a fact. It really is. It is what it is. But I still love Greek mythology, and I take it for what it is. But I also love seeing these stories give these female women who were, in their own way, given an empowered sense of identity in Greek myths, but now we actually see them have their own agency. You know, they exist more outside of the male gaze, if that makes any sense. I really appreciated it, and I love that Jennifer Saint is doing this. I can't wait to read Hera. That's on my TBR for June. Can't wait to read it, because I love Hera. Don't piss off the Queen of the Gods. Just don't do it. But, in any case, I liked seeing Atalanta really find herself. And she's not just she finds herself outside of Artemis as well. She finds herself, and and what she wants to be. She doesn't want to be beholden to anyone. You know, as she goes on the quest with the Argonauts, she discovers, wow, I really don't want to be beholden to Artemis either. I want to be my own person, and I don't want to be judged for being my own person. You know, I kind of want to be like a man and just sleep with whoever I want and not be judged for it. But I also want to be this warrior woman and respected for being a warrior woman. And you do have some of the characters who do respect her and really do think of her and who she is and how she operates. But then you have some of the other characters who are just like, she's just another woman, whatever. So I really liked seeing her get her agency. Even the ending, you think, oh no, this is awful. But no, even with her ending, she finds herself truly. Like, she's at home in her body, and she's at home with her identity, and she's at home with her femininity. So she finds strength and power in what she has become by the end of the novel, and I really liked her journey. A lot of people think, oh, Atalanta should have been... I saw someone gave it a 1-star review, and I understand why they gave it a 1-star review. They're like, she should have been a lesbian. Okay. I understand that, and then that mentality. But if you look at the Greek myths, you know, she was not, you know, a lesbian. And I really don't want to see that that put in there, only because then that means some of the sexuality in the book, her regaining her sexual awareness and coming to terms with her sexuality, I think it would have been taken away, because then some of those scenes would have ended up becoming rape scenes. And I would not have been in favor of that. Because remember, a female, in Greek myths, she does have a kid. But I liked that we explore her sexuality and her owning her sexuality. And be like, you know what? I'm going to be like a man and have sex with whoever I want. Like, she should not be shamed for it, because the men are not shamed for it. And I liked that she really regains her agency for that. So that's the only reason why I'm just like, her being a lesbian wouldn't really work. Now, you know who would work? Medusa. Medusa was a lesbian. That would really be something awesome. And I see Artemis as ace, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. That's my interpretation of these Greek myths, and people are allowed their own interpretation. So I understand why that one person gave it a 1-star review for that one criticism, because it would work ideally outside of the Argonauts. You know what? She could have even been bi. You know, if she were bisexual, that would be something. That would have really been something. You know what? Atalanta could have been bi. I'm going to go with she could have been bi. I say that as a bi woman. But I liked that we didn't kind of pigeonhole her to any sort of label. That way she was free to explore her sexuality. So that was my takeaway from it. After that, I read Blood of Hercules. I wanted to like this book. I bought the Fairy Loot exclusive edition. I sold it to my friend for what I paid for it. Nothing extra. I'm like, I paid $32 for it. I won't even charge you shipping and handling. She's like, yay, I'll take it from you. And she paid me for it. I hated this book. I hated this book so much. Oh my god. There are so many reasons why I hated this book. First of all, Alexis has absolutely no spine in the book. Her spine exists in her head. She just tells people off in her head. It's like, oh my god, grow a spine and just spout the words. Like, I understand you have a stutter, but I would have more respect for you even if you stuttered. Because, a stutter means nothing. You standing up for yourself, despite having a stutter, would mean everything, you know? She has no spine. She has no personality, really. There's a lack of world building. Every single character is unlikable. They're just awful. And there's so many inconsistencies with the plot that bug the hell out of me. I hated this book. It was just poorly written. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, she just sounds like us, because this was part of the book club discussion I heard, because it was the book club pick for the Kiss and Tell book club. She's like, well, she sounds like this. Not the way we talk does not always translate into literature in a good way. You know, colloquialisms, they don't always translate, and that's why you have an editor. What the fuck was the editor doing? Were they just sleeping on the job with this book? I mean, there are ways the dialogue could have worked, and I just wish the characters had been likable. One fucking character should have been likable, but they're all awful. They're all awful. And they all keep criticizing her. She's like, oh yeah, she's a mutt. It's not going to be easy. It's just like, girl grew up in a cardboard box, which again, doesn't make sense. Given the opening chapter of the book, just doesn't make sense. She's malnourished, and y'all are just, and she doesn't even stand up for herself. Again, not that it's their business how she grew up, but if it were me, I'd be like, for the record, I'm gonna, fact check you. You want to criticize me for ABC, not for something you don't know and for something that is false. That would be me, She needs a spine. And, oh, I hated this book. On Storygraph, I gave it 0 stars. On Goodreads, you have to give it at least 1 star, so it got 1 star, but this is a terrible book, and I do not recommend it to anyone. Terrible. Terrible. After that, something more pleasant, Dragon's Nest, Dragons of Del Toro, Book 1. Absolutely love reading this book to my kid. I'm rereading these to my son every night. I read a chapter. And these are books I read as a kid, and oh my god, they aged so well. I'm really, really sad that they're out of print, but I highly recommend this to parents. Please go out and see if you can get the Del Toro Quest series, because my son is excited. He loves seeing the map in the beginning, because yeah, we all love maps and books. Whoop, whoop. Maps and books are the best. But it's just, whatchamacallit? I had a thought. Lost the thought. It has aged really well, that's what I'm saying. Because as I'm reading it, and I love seeing my son get excited about it, as I'm reading it, I only read him a chapter. And then once I notice he's asleep, and I'm like, chapter left from the cliffhanger. I want to keep reading. I want to keep reading. Even though I've already read them as a kid, and even though I'm an adult 30-year-old woman, I want to keep reading because it's written so well. So, highly recommend it to everyone. After that, I read The Poppy War. I was kind of prepared. It's a 5-star read. Don't get me wrong. I read this for the fantasy book club at my local Barnes & Noble that I'm the host of. Traumatizing. There are some scenes in there that are truly traumatizing because of the brutality. But it's also not unrealistic brutality, which also, when I'm reading it, breaks my heart. I'm like, wow, this is just normal wartime practice, gang raping women, soldiers, or even what they do to pregnant people and to children. And I'm just like, this is awful. This is traumatizing. And some people are like, how could you reread? Because I said in the book, I'm like, yeah, I had to reread certain pages. They're like, how could you do that? I'm like, because I had to make sure I was really reading what I was reading, not to torture myself. But it was really good. It's a really good book. I love the fantasy element of it. Rin is frustrating only because you feel bad for her. She doesn't really have any good choices. She's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either be a baby-making machine or be a soldier. So that's when her nationalism comes into play. But then she discovers she's a Spearly. So then that's when her nationalism kind of flips. So you feel for her. She has no good choices. But it's like, what's the lesser of two evils? That's where she's kind of stuck with. And I just, Xiang has a point. Especially when you get to the end, you're like, we saw this coming. Especially from the beginning of the book. It's like, yeah, that was definitely the decision she was always going to make. And you're just like, wow. It's a good book. I highly recommend it. Kwong is an amazing writer. However, it is traumatizing. So, reader be prepared. And also, don't audiobook it. Don't audiobook it. Just read 30 pages a day if you really want to read it. But do not audiobook it. Just because those traumatizing scenes are just like, and they're all the way like near the end. They're literally in like that last quarter of the book, all the trauma. But yeah, don't audiobook it. This is a book you need to physically read, not audiobook. After that, for my book club, Read Whitson's Workshop, I read something a little bit more lighthearted. I read Water Moon. I have to say, if you are a Studio Ghibli fan, if you love Spirited Away especially, you need to read this book. This book should be a Studio Ghibli movie. I stand by that statement. I'm going to keep repeating it until I finally see that Studio Ghibli picks it up. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep putting it out there. Maybe I can manifest it. It's beautiful. Just the storytelling is beautiful. The way that the modes of transportation kind of change. The way it talks about choice. It really is a moving story. And, I mean, atmosphere. It's just, this is a book you want to read with, like, lo-fi music playing in the background because it's just relaxing and kind of wholesome, but also very thoughtful and very compelling. And it also does have really good high-tension scenes. Like, it really is just a Studio Ghibli movie in book form. And if you get the hardcover, which I highly recommend, the dust jacket turns into a paper boat. And it's great. And you should do it. Because it has a beautiful naked cover as well. Highly recommend. Just read Water Moon. So, after that, I read Samantha Shannon's Day of Fallen Night. Loved it. I loved it as much as Fury of the Orange Tree. I love the queerness in there. And I like going back in time. Like, this book takes place 500 years before the Fury of the Orange Tree. So, you're seeing... Definitely read Fury of the Orange Tree first. Because there's a lot of kind of like Easter eggs. You're just like, oh my god, that makes so much sense for what happens 500 years from now. It's just a really engaging story. It's chunky. You know, that was my chunky book. It's like 800 and some pages. Whew! I read that one 30 pages a day because I did not want to miss a second. But it's just, you know, you have wyverns, and then you have the history of the House of Barenth, you know, and you're getting a little bit more history in the House of Barenth, and you get to see Kayla again, our witch of the Haithwood, and the Tuva, and Suri, and Espar of the Fury, and then it's just in Wolf. It has so many great, memorable characters. I didn't even write their names in my notes, and I remembered their names. I didn't think I was going to, honestly, because there are a lot of characters. But Glorian, oh, she's amazing. She really like grows into herself. She's at war with the wyverns. She's pregnant. She gives birth, and she rides with her child into battle before she's like, the battle is lost, and she gives it to Wolf, and she's like, run. And then she is a warrior queen. Shieldheart is what they call her. And she's great. I love the characters. You know, it's just really engaging novel, and it was just so much fun to read. And yes, it took me almost the entire month to read it, because I was only reading 30 pages a day. So, honestly, loved it. After that, I read Love at Second Sight by F.T. Lukens. Love this book. It was so cute and wholesome. Just imagine, you're a normal queer boy. You're going to a school with paranormals. Your best friend's a witch. You're crushing on the local werewolf boy hottie over there. And all of a sudden, bam, you discover you're clairvoyant. And what's your first vision? You see a murder. And now you're just trying to figure out how you fit into this paranormal society, because your parents want to be something out of Pleasantville. They just want to be absolutely normal, you know, like Stepfords. And you're just trying to fit into this new world. And also, you're trying to solve a murder. And it's amazing to me to see the story evolve. And it was really such a sweet It was really a quick and sweet read. It was very wholesome. It's all about found family, and honestly, it was great, and I loved it. I love that this month I had only one bad book, and I pretty much read everything else. Last but not least, I read Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Eternal Edition Volume 6. Woo! Okay, I did not know this. I did not know Sailor Moon S, Hearts of Ice, the one with Snow Kaguya, was based off of the story in this novel. So this volume is the one that kind of concludes the Deathbusters arc, right? Deathbusters? Yeah. The Deathbusters arc with Mistress 9. First of all, I love the 90s one. I have a nostalgic appreciation for the 90s one. However, this is my hindrance with that one. There is a lot of filler. Yes, we do get to see a little bit more character development, but we don't lose that character development, I feel like, with Sailor Moon Crystal. And I appreciate how Sailor Moon Crystal adapted the story and stayed as close to the source material as possible. It gives me a deeper appreciation of Sailor Moon Crystal while I'm also really enjoying the manga, because there are some things that are cut out but not completely. They're kind of like paraphrased in it, but it's still such a really good adaptation, in my opinion. I know it's very controversial, but I love it because it's really close. And I also like that it's different than the 90s one, because now I can actually keep them separate. I can appreciate the 90s one for what it is, and I can also appreciate the new one for what it is. So I can love both, and I do love both. Although I think I like Sailor Moon Crystal a little bit more, especially now that they redubbed the 90s one. I'm not a fan of the redubbing, to be perfectly honest. But luckily I have the first 2 seasons with the Dick audio on DVD before they redubbed it. So yay for that. But yeah, really good. And the story of the movie in the end, after they conclude the Deathbusters and you get to see Sailor Saturn and all her awesomeness and Pluto, now you get to see the Sailor Moon S movie and how different those two are. And honestly, I love the way the movie adapted the story, and I like the way that the story kind of like evolved. As you can like, oh my god, this is so different but also the same. It was really good. So yeah, those are the 11 books that I read this month. Hopefully, I will get to read a little bit more this coming month in June. So, wish me luck. And let me know in the comments below how your reading went for me. In any case, thank you all for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with all your book loving friends. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, mwah, happy reading.